So in terms of the structure of this particular webinar, I would first request our panelists to share their views around some of these insights or some of these questions that you had asked us while filling up the form. So feel free to kind of ask them questions when they are speaking. You could put those in the chat window, and we'll try and answer those as soon as we can during the webinar itself. After which, I will take you through the structure that typically most organizations would follow as far as their HR teams are concerned, the functions are concerned. And then we will finally get to, some of the skill sets that you could look at for the next few months before you get into your final placements, and skill sets which will, make you good HR professionals. So with that, over to you, Cecilia. Would you like to start and talk about, your views, your experience and perspectives around, some of these areas?
Yeah, thank you, Meenu. And
Cecilia, you're not audible.
Can you hear me now?
No.
Okay, then Can you hear me?
This is good. Yes.
Okay. No, I had put on my headphones. I thought that would be a better way. I would get to hear and speak also better. But anyway, I'm really happy to be part of this, and thank you so much for the invitation. Look forward to also hearing Ganesh and your views. And I think, looking back, and when you said 20 years, you said 2 decades, it really struck me that yes, it's been that long. And actually, I think while we can talk about certifications and what we can talk about years of experience, but I think what really gives you the hands-on knowledge and understanding is the work that you do, is the kind of is the working relationships that you build, is the kind of organizations you work with. So those are things that I think are very personal to each of us and help each of us on our career journey. If I just have to look at the kind of questions that are there, and asking about trends in HR in the next few years, especially after the COVID times, I think we've always been talking about change and managing change, and nothing comes to as real as managing change in these times. And I think what qualities or what skill sets you really require is your ability to be, running to stand in the same place. So how adaptable are you? How agile are you? The kind of, are you really holding on to your comfort zone? These are questions, these are qualities that, each of us will need to answer, because today there is something which we've never envisaged before. And while people say, things will go back to normal, maybe this is what is going to be normal. There is going to be social distancing in the future. There is going to be, more work from home in the future. There are going to be more efficiencies by organization in the future. And these are just things that we have to be aware of, and we have to be on top of. So these are just some of my thoughts, Meenu, and I think I don't want to just hog the conversation. I just pass it on to Ganesh, and then maybe we could have an interactive session with the students, and that I think will really probably be more useful, rather than me just talking about what has happened.
Sure. Thank you, Cecilia. And Ganesh, over to you. And, if you could also talk about your perspectives around some of these areas.
Okay. Are you all able to hear me?
Yes.
Are you able to hear me? Great.
You're audible.
Great. So thank you for the invite, Meenu, and wonderful listening to you and Cecilia. What I have done is kind of organize my thoughts in preparation for this meeting. So I'm going to take 7-8 minutes to give a brief view of some of my perspectives in this area. So there are 3 things that I want to talk about. The first one is the role of HR. And HR, as we all know, is quite responsible for making the business win. And HR does that by driving organizational performance. And there are four blocks in HR that act as the four levers in driving organizational performance. And as TB Rao was, are you able to hear me now? Is it better? Somebody? Okay.
Voice is
I
breaking.
think you break.
Is it better now? Is it better now? I put on a headset.
Yeah, I think it's better without the headset because that's what worked for me as well.
Okay, let me take out my headset. Give me a minute. Just give me a minute, please.
This is so better, I think.
Okay, are you able to hear me better now?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, fantastic. So the first lever is organization, which is really about looking at organization structure, spans, ratios, costs, productivity. The second lever is around talent, the kind of talent that you have, the talent pipeline that you have, the diversity that you have, the equity that you have in the market. The third lever, which is typically used, is capacity or capability. Do people have the right capability to do their jobs for today and in the future? Does the organization have the capacity to deliver the expectation from the market? And the fourth lever is all around culture, right? As TV Rao pointed out, the four levers that HR professionals have are culture building, capacity building, talent management, and organization building. And that's really the role of HR. Now, go to the second theme that I want to talk about, which is about the skills that an HR professional needs. And some of it is common, not just for HR. I think the functional basics are the first block that you all need to focus on. And functional basics is about building depth of experience in a few HR topics. It could be compensation, it could be recruitment, it could be HR analytics, but it's important to develop depth in a few functional areas. Equally important is a thorough understanding of business. Once functional basics are done, I think it's equally important to focus on what I would call as managerial basics. And there are two things I want to call out. One is communication, and should not underestimate the importance of communication and building communication skills. It sounds very, very old-fashioned, but trust me, lack of communication can derail careers. The second important skill, and which is becoming more and more important, is what I call as numeracy. Numeracy is very, very important in a world which is throwing up tons of data, including people data. So we should be able to interpret the data that is available from transactions and be able to make sense of it and drive interventions. And the last one is leadership. Regardless of your functional area, it's important to exhibit the right leadership skills, right? And one thing that I would call out on leadership is the need to be authentic, right? Do as you say and say as you do. The third theme that I'm going to cover is some musings on careers. And these are based on my own career experiences, and I'll probably take a few minutes to cover these. The first one is courage. I think it's important to speak your mind and not be afraid of consequences. I don't mean that we need to be reckless, but I think it's important to speak your mind in a structured manner. And many a time, it's important to ask. I was 10 years, 12 years back, I was in a role in which I was failing miserably because there were three roles combined together to create my role.
and I was not able to deliver. And I struggled till one day I decided, hey, I need to solve for this. And I asked for the role to be split up. And I spoke to all the stakeholders in HR. And after 2 months, they actually split up the role. So it's important to ask, it's important to tell if something is not going okay. The second is, I would say, manage headwind and tailwind assignments, right? There are two kinds of assignments. You have headwind assignments and you have tailwind assignments. It's important to do a few good headwind assignments. Assignments which are tough, which have a lot of risk associated with them, but they actually strengthen you as a HR professional and strengthen you as a leader. The third point on careers is about don't leave opportunities that come by. Many a time opportunities come by and sometimes we let go of them for a variety of reasons. And in my career, many years back, when I was an HR business partner in a factory, I was asked to take up an additional responsibility as a TPM leader. I declined to take up the responsibility because I felt I wouldn't do justice to my core HR job. And 20 years later, I still regret that decision. But I've learned from that. And in the past 8-9 years, I've grabbed every responsibility that comes my way. I think it's important to grab responsibilities and opportunities. Yes, I think I'm going to stop here. These are the things I wanted to talk about. And over to you, Meenu.
Yes. Just give me a second. All right. Thank you so much, Ganesh. And thank you, Cecilia, once again. So really, I'm going to pick up some of those insights as well while I'm talking to everybody about some of the content that we are going to cover here. Okay, just give me a second. Okay, so this is one question that keeps coming up quite often, that what does human resources function really do? So I remember when I started my career 16 years ago, and when I chose HR as my career about 20 years ago, one of the things my relatives would ask is, what are you really going to do? It's an unheard of function. Maybe in our circle it was unheard of, and they would actually say that, okay, isn't HR all about filing personal information, and isn't HR all about ensuring that salaries are paid on time? And today when I meet students from different graduate schools, I see similar questions coming up, though packaged differently. So I get questions like, so I don't like finance and marketing, so HR is the only option then left for me. Or, I don't like to travel, so maybe HR is an option for me. Or, where will my career actually go if I take up HR as a career option? Is there a scope in this function? This question actually keeps coming up quite often. So I thought maybe in this, webinar, we could attempt to answer some of those questions that will come up. Ganesh and Cecilia would also speak about their experiences, but just to give you an understanding of, what HR really does. So HR in most large organizations is structured around, these three pillars. So what these three pillars typically do is, or rather these three pillars are of specialist business partners and, shared service centers. It's a three-legged stool model. You can actually, Google it online. There's a lot of content available on that. So basically, the specialists are the ones who actually lend the depth within the function. So these are the HR experts across different functions. And like I said, they lend the depth to the function. So if you are a talent acquisition specialist, or if you're a compensation and benefits specialist, or you're a HR technology specialist, you provide that vertical expertise within the organization. The business partners, in contrast, they work closely with the business units and they partner across this entire gamut of functions. They partner with them horizontally. So they cover most of these functions when it comes to partnering with the business or advising the business or working in close quarters with the business. And then they also work closely with the specialists and the shared service units. So if there is a need within talent acquisition say compensation and benefits, they would work with CNB specialists and offer that support to that particular business unit. And finally, the shared services, they are the strong back end. They are that back end that would take care of all the transactional, transactional activities that are core to employees. So, typically things like attendance management, ensuring the joining formalities are happening, the policies are being managed well, those are some of the things that are managed in the back end for a lot of such large organizations. So in the interest of time, and please keep your questions pouring, in the interest of time, all of us here actually thought that we could share with you some depth within these functions and actually talk to you about what these sub-functions typically do. So basically talking to you about what kind of career paths can you look at in each of these functions. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover 3 or 4 of these, and say for example within learning and development. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this slide. So you will see words like performers, translators, strategists. So typically in an organization, all the entry-level roles would be classified as the performer roles. All the mid-management roles, just for simplicity's sake, would be categorized as translators, and all the senior management roles would be categorized as strategists. Like I said, the whole idea is for us to today look at the depth in which you could potentially go within each of these functions. So when we talk about learning and development as an entry level member within the organization, a team member within the organization, a performer is largely responsible for ensuring that the data is in place, learning plans are communicated to people around, you have an understanding of what kind of learning needs analysis process needs to be followed, and you support the managers in putting a developmental plan together. To say a middle management person or a middle management leader or a manager would actually be working closely with some of the managers, some of the functional heads to identify what capability gaps exist within the organization. How will whatever they learn, how can that be integrated into what they do? They would support the design and delivery of some of these programs. They would actually be delivering some of these programs, all the way to, say, a strategist or a head of the department, you may call it, or somebody who's actually creating a strategy for learning and development, where they would be looking at the larger picture within the organization to say, okay, if I have a business goal or I have a business strategy, how do I translate it into a learning strategy for my team? How do I influence leaders to actually buy into that strategy, or to be co-creators of that strategy? And how do I ensure that diversity and inclusion principles are actually become a part of our overall learning objectives and goals? Similarly, if we move on to performance and rewards, and I think when I go to different campuses, this one comes up really, strongly for a lot of students, where, the question always is that if I were to get into performance and rewards, if I were to get into compensation and benefits, what do I really need to know? And honestly, to start with, have a detailed understanding of what a compensation structure is all about, what are the different components, how do you calculate the same, do you understand the taxation structure, do you understand how the performance management process works, how does pay and reward actually fit into that whole performance plan, I think just start with those fundamentals, and that's what performers are required to do. Moving into translators, where it's largely about saying that if I want to attract good talent, what kind of compensation plans do I need to have in place? What kind of compensation mix do I need to have? How do I conduct a compensation benchmarking survey? How do I coach managers and ensure that they understand what the performance matrices are? And once we have the key result areas, how do we build linkages so every function is talking to each other in a similar language? So that's what a middle management would typically do. Moving on to a strategist role, where it's again about, strategy. How do I convert my long-term strategy into an operational compensation strategy? What is it that we as an organization are chasing, and therefore how does that link back to my compensation plans, my performance plans? How do I reward people so that I'm able to retain the best talent? How do I, what kind of recommendations do I go with to my, remuneration committee? So I hope you are understanding the depth, because it's important for us to appreciate that what kind of roles are available. How can you actually move within these roles? How can you actually, gain that depth and, the horizontal and the vertical understanding of each of these functions? Talent acquisition, and again, a lot of people are scared of this function. People feel that talent acquisition is not a very fancy job, because all you need to do is just get people into the organization. But speaking from the last 16 years, I think this is one of the most crucial functions, within the HR gamut, if you exactly know how to work around it well. And that's largely because you are the custodian of an important process whereby you're bringing people into the organization, and the kind of people, the quality of people that you bring inside the organization would determine how well your organization is able to achieve its objectives. So not to be taken as a non-fancy function at all. What you could do, yeah, Cecilia, you had a point?
Yeah, I have a
I can't hear you.
Okay. Experience actually of TA, and I'd just like to share it very quickly here just to make things a little bit more exciting. So in a previous company where I was heading HR, we went through a transformation, and it was a global company. And there was a global decision that we will outsource talent acquisition, and I was really like, how can you, outsource talent acquisition? Because that's such an important part of your organization.
Yeah.
You are getting people to work in your organization. You don't just go and get them from the market like potatoes or onions. You have to understand whether they will fit into your culture, whether they will fit into the role that they do. And it's not just about previous experience or previous the kind of education that they've had, but there are just so many gamuts. And it's really important for talent acquisition to be part of your organization, and not as it's great to have outsourced partners to work along with you, but you definitely need to have some bit of it within your organization. And I moved on from the organization, and then I think 2 years hence, and I've been in touch with my team, and they actually had to fold up their entire plan because it just felt so badly that they couldn't really, and it was such a huge expensive mistake that was made, and in the process they just lost so many people. They struggled. Those 2 years were just a very, very tough time. And I think for every organization who thinks that they can just like pick and move, it's not so easy. So you definitely need talent acquisition, at least some bit of it, to be within your organization. You can't just outsource the entire gamut of it.
Sure. And sure, thank you so much. So that's an interesting viewpoint, Cecilia, because a lot of times, we have this perception that talent acquisition is all about recruiting people, whereas it's actually more than that. And coming from different organizations and the experiences I've had with the talent acquisitions team, I've seen that people do much more than just getting people in. It's all about seeing that, okay, how productive they are, what different sources are we, and especially now I'm talking about the performers, since a lot of our audience today would be interested in those roles. It's about looking at your sources, what kind of gaps do you have within the organization, and how can you fill those gaps with all the right set of people.
Yes, and I think it also, and I think to be a good HR professional and to really work along with your CEO, and I think Ganesh will also agree with me. You have to start with understanding the business.
Yes.
There is no substitute for understanding the business, getting a pulse of what is happening, and that doesn't happen. So you did mention about people who don't want to travel and want to have a desk job. That's not what HR of today and tomorrow is, because unless you go out there into the field, unless you understand those feet on street, what they are doing, work along with your frontline managers, work along with your managers. And working doesn't mean that you just go to maybe another city and then do a meeting with them. It doesn't work like that. You actually work with them, because that's the way that you have a first-hand understanding of what's going right, what's not going so right. A proactive view to understanding talent in your organization, a proactive view to understand what is the pulse of your organization, because yes, your organization is where it is located, but it's also located in those frontline sales guys, those frontline people who are there out somewhere, maybe far away, as in up north, or maybe in Vijayawada, or maybe in Nagpur, or some sea city in India. So if you think that by sitting in your head office, in your office, you're going to make an excellent HR professional, I think it's time to change that view as well.
Yes, absolutely. And perspectives like these, where when you've gained that experience firsthand from the market, from being in the field, also gives you that credibility within the organization. People start knowing you beyond your name and beyond the fact that you come from the HR department.
Yes.
They start respecting your presence in the organization. They start respecting your views, because they know that you know the realities of the market.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, like we were discussing about talent acquisition, I think, what makes this function really interesting is, you're actually the custodian of the talent when they are coming into the organization. You're custodian of the process in terms of ensuring that the right set of people come in. So therefore, what's important is, what is your network like? What sources are you tapping? What kind of tools are you using to ensure that, you're evaluating the people correctly, and then therefore making sure that, you have all the other data in place around this talent, like, what's the attrition like? What's the productivity? What are the productivity measures like? Are these people capable enough? How are they performing? What's the 60-day, 90-day, 120-day performance, so on and so forth. One thing which I'm not purposely talking at this point of time, but I thought I should, make this point over here. So technology becomes a key component in all these functions that we are talking about. Analytics becomes a key component out here. So it's important that your orientation with numbers, your orientation with, understanding the story behind the numbers is really out there. It's really strong, because whichever function you do, you have to deal with numbers. At some or the other point, you will see some Excel sheets coming into you, and what kind of stories do you gain out of those Excel sheets? These are not just the numbers staring at your face. There are stories behind those numbers. And as HR professionals, it's important to know what those stories are. What are they talking to you? What do you need to, really act upon when it comes to those stories? So I think the more you're familiar with numbers, the more you're familiar with Excel sheets, it's really going to help you in your career, and especially as you enter into the organizations very soon. I would quickly jump into, okay, back on time. Okay, so we spoke about shared services as well, and again that was one question that had come up, that why do you need a shared services team, and what is the role? Is it like all transactional? Yes, it is transactional, but it's quite critical in organizations, in huge organizations where you have thousands of people working with you. Shared services has an important role to play, because they actually take away a big chunk of back end role from the HR business partners and from the specialists, so that they can focus on what they are good with. And these are the guys who actually look at each of the processes to kind of say that, okay, how do we make sure the SLAs are met? How do we make sure that employee queries are resolved on time, as far as the policies, their eligibilities, their payroll, etc. is concerned? And how do we make sure that we provide all the right data to our stakeholders at all right time? So again, it's a very insight driven role. There is organizations are talking about how do we integrate technology with this particular function, so that we're able to help this set of organization really operate at its efficient level. And as you grow into this, so there is a career path here as well, in case somebody likes to manage back end work with, play with a lot of data, play with technology to see how can we automate a lot of things, play with analytics, do a lot of data crunching. There are options available here as well, and the options really are like, you from here you actually move into a larger role where you actually talk to the stakeholders and understand their business and understand what kind of reports will they actually need, and how can you as HR professionals, shared services professionals, design those reports so that it aids in their decision making process. Similarly, where you have dedicated technology teams, this particular team actually plays a huge part to talk to those teams and help them understand how should the policies look like for an employee, and therefore how does that get translated into an experience on the technology. Similarly, as you move further up, it's all about how do you negotiate contracts with the vendors. It's all about working with the senior leadership team to see that what kind of analytics and reports will they need that you could provide out to them. It's also about creating a business case to see can HR be more efficient, because some of the tasks are taken away by the shared services team. So so at the strategist level, it's also about building that business case to say that, okay, because of the kind of work that they do, the HR is able to be more efficient, and therefore can the profitability drivers be influenced within the business as a result of this particular function. So there is a career out here as well to evaluate. Right. So finally we move on to some of the things which I thought I could share with you from my personal experience. And I would also invite Cecilia and Ganesh to step in and also give you guys their inputs about what do they think are the skills. So this question keeps coming up, that what do we do next? The placements will happen in another maybe 10 months. How do we prepare for those placements? And I feel, so these are some of the things which I would, strongly recommend. On top of it being, get your basics right. Work on, see how you could, improve your email writing skills. How can you improve working with Excel, Word, PowerPoint? How can you communicate well and communicate with influence? These are the things which a lot of people take for granted, but as you move into the organization, as you integrate yourself within any organization that you get into, these are the skills that actually make you stand out. People start noticing you if you're communicating with impact. So next few months, just get your act together and say that, okay, how do I work on some of these skills? And these are the basic skills which people would expect you to be really strong with. There are tons and tons of MOOCs available these days, online courses. Please go ahead and register for some which are like really, really good for you. If you think, okay, I need to work on performance management, I need to learn performance management a bit more, go take up a MOOC on performance management. Or if you want to learn about design thinking, you want to learn about creativity, go leverage MOOCs. The more you know, the more certifications, or maybe the more knowledge that you have about different aspects of HR, at the time of your interview, you'll be able to speak with that much of confidence and authority. So imagine, if you are a fresher with no experience and you're sitting in front of a recruiter, how would you engage that recruiter? How would you expand the interest of that recruiter? And it's only when you have things to talk about in your CV. So think about what additional skills do you want to include in your CV so that you're able to speak, engage, and have a decent conversation, and have a rather an enriched conversation with the recruiter. One of the things which I learned, in a very, how do I put it? I learned this really late in my career, I would feel, and I still feel that there is so much for me to learn, is all about psychology. The more you talk to people, you realize that you really need to understand them as individuals, as distinct individuals who have different motivations, different set of aspirations. They think differently. So if you know basics of psychology, if you understand theories of psychology, if you understand how human behavior works, it always gives you an edge. It will help you interact and engage with people differently. So learn about it. Again, there are enough number of MOOCs available, free MOOCs available online. Just go ahead, register, learn about psychology as a subject. A lot of you keep asking, when we were going through the questions that some of you had put up, you were talking about summer internships. Yes, it's actually a make or break for a lot of you, because again, if you do not have any experience prior to your MBAs, summer internship really is all you can talk about in the interview. So the more depth you build in your summer internships, the better it is for you. And if you feel that, okay, your project is not to your liking, or your project is not giving you an exposure that you really need, nobody stops you from doing a dual project. You can speak to your college, or you could just pick up a project by yourself. Say if you think, okay, I need to learn more about learning and development as a function, go deep into the function, read up on it, read your textbooks, read research papers, read articles, and actually do a dual project if required. Do a separate project altogether to say that, okay, maybe for these 2 months I just read about learning and development as a function. So build that I wouldn't say expertise, but build that depth of understanding as far as this function is concerned, so that you're able to speak convincingly when you are meeting the recruiter. Cecilia spoke about, business understanding. Can't kind of, emphasize as much about it. I think this is the most crucial part. And a lot of, people think that HR is one another function within the organization, which is a support function. I think we need to step out of that mindset to say that HR is a support function. And it's actually a partner function within the organization, and that partner function actually comes in when you understand the business, when you understand the products, when you understand the markets, when you understand, how how the organization is making money, when you understand, how plants are operating. It's only when you go and meet people, it's only when you understand that, okay, how does a business actually run? What are the real life challenges? What are on the ground challenges? That you will be actually able to partner well with the business. You'll be actually able to give them your view and opinion whenever the business needs one. And I think that mindset can be built right away. It's not like you have to wait till you join an organization and then start understanding the business. You could actually do it right away. You have subjects that teach you about different aspects of business. Go ahead and opt for those subjects. Take up a balance sheet, any balance sheet, read about the balance sheet. While only few pages would talk about, profit and loss account and the actual balance sheet as in the numbers, but there are a lot of stories, like, if you get a 200-page balance sheet, there are a lot of stories about the business which are given in the balance sheet. Go read about those stories, because that will kind of help you build that mindset and appreciate what the business is all about. And I kept talking about, read as much as you can, read papers, read research articles, read. There's so many online resources available these days. Read as much as you can beyond your textbooks as well. So while it's important that you know what's written in your textbooks, but reading beyond textbooks actually builds that perspective. And finally, stay active on LinkedIn. You have to build your brand. So how would you want to come across? Can you, even if you write like a couple of paragraphs each week, I think that should be good enough. Follow some influential people on LinkedIn and see what is it that they are writing. How is it going to help you in your careers? So that's really from my side. Cecilia, Ganesh, would you like to add in something to it from your experience of so many years working with different organizations? What do you actually look for as recruiters when you hire people from campuses? What skill sets, mindsets do you look for?
Hello.
Yes. Yeah, Ganesh.
Ganesh, are you saying something? Can you hear me, Neenu?
Can't hear you. You're quite feeble, actually.
Now?
Little better?
I don't know what's the problem with the connection.
This is okay. This is actually okay. Yeah.
Okay. So yes, I did hear you when you spoke about reading and picking up interest topics. But what I really look for in a person, and if we are going to campus, it's obvious because they are going to be freshers and we know that. But we want somebody with a fresh outlook, and and that's the reason why organizations go to campus. The most important thing when you are applying for a role with a company, and if you've been a fresher, then I think the most important goal is go prepared, understand the business, have some interest in the organization that you are applying to. Because if you don't have an interest, if you just apply and you go for an interview, it just falls apart very soon. So as an organization, when I go to campus, I look for people who are really interested in the area that my organization is focusing on. So over here, where when I'm with J&J, so we really look at people who are interested in healthcare, who are interested in consumer health, who are interested in pharmaceuticals. Because if you have an interest in something, that's the first step to really take, because you already have an interest, and this is an organization that hopefully will be something that you would be interested in. So the way that you develop interest isn't just like tomorrow's your interview, today you're reading up. No, it is something that think about what are the kind of spaces that you would like to work in, and probably research about it. research about organizations, research about practices that these organizations have. Whenever you get an interview call, or if these organizations are coming to your campus, definitely research about the organization, have an understanding of your role, and then go in for the interview. While you don't have experience, it's fine. You can use, I mean, the way that you will, interact with the recruiter is, if you've had like teams experiences. So if you've played sport, if you've been on college teams, if you've, been on business presentation teams, you can talk about what does teamwork mean to you? How does, effective teamwork, how have you managed conflicts? So these are areas that you don't need to work within an organization. You can also talk about life that you've experienced. And these real to you. As a recruiter, I also look at, the attitude of a person. Is he or she really interested in what he or she has applied for? Because when you're interested, then, half the battle's won. The interest is what will spark you on to learning more. And these are pretty much questions that people will ask you. So do go prepared for the interview. Do go prepared with understanding the organization, understanding the industry that the organization is in, and of course also understand why is it that you want to do this job. Yeah, because many times people really come with a total blank, saying that okay, this job came, so that's why, I thought I thought that I would apply for it. But that's not a good enough answer. You really need to think about why you want to work in this place. So, and it's not only about your learning, the organization should also gain from having you as an employee. So what is it that you bring to the table? Yeah, these are certain points that you should definitely prepare when you go in for an interview, when you apply for a job with an organization.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes, Ganesh, you're audible.
Okay, I just want to mention a couple of points. I think the two of you have covered a lot of very important inputs as you get into the placement season. One of the things that I have used, and it's helped me, I've shifted jobs a couple of times, and I've also interviewed within Unilever for a few jobs. My suggestion is create a PowerPoint deck for the interview preparation process, and on the heading mention various questions, and then put what the answers would be in bullet points. Don't script it completely, but mention the bullet points, right? And more the number of questions that you put, every question in a slide, better will be the quality of your interview preparation, right? And for example, if you are going for an interview to a particular company, you should read up about that company. I mean, I know it's difficult to read up about 20 companies, but you can read up about the top 5 companies. Yeah, Google them, try and go through their annual reports, so that you're able to ask, sensible questions to the interviewer. At the end of any interview, you'll be asked whether if you have any questions to ask. And it's important for you to ask questions that are relevant to the organization that you are interviewing for. I'm moving away from interviewing and mentioning something more conceptual here. Remember, organizations hire you for the value you're able to create, not for the knowledge that you have, right? So we need to remember that you create value when you translate your knowledge into something that the organization values, right? It could be about creating an ESOP package. It could be about hiring leadership talent. It could be about processing payroll. It could be anything, right? But the value is created when you're able to do something. Therefore, depth is very important, and as important as breadth, right? If you're going to, nobody is going to ask you 20 things about 20 topics. Yeah, they may ask you which topic you're interested in or where you've done your summer internship. In that topic, please ensure that you are really up to speed. For example, if your summer project is around performance management, read up about performance management. What's happening? What's the latest? What are the practices of companies? So that you're able to talk in depth about the topic. If it's about recruitment, you should be able to talk about it for 30 minutes. That's the acid test. Yeah. So depth is important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Cecilia and Ganesh, for those inputs. You want to invite the participants and check if they have any specific questions for any of us or all three of us. Happy to answer those. You could unmute yourself and ask those questions, or you could put it in the chat box.
You know, my video isn't starting. I don't know. I just blanked out. I think.
Okay. Yeah? No worries at all.
Yeah, hello. Good evening, ma'am, and good evening, sir. I am Kshama Pathak, and I'm from Symbiosis Institute of Management Studies. So I have a question. Like, currently, I'm interning with Tata Steel. Like, we all know that we have a project offered by Tata Steel to many of the students. So I'm working on employee engagement. So basically, it's kind of research that I'm doing, and I will be putting this as my summer internship, and I will be sitting for the placement. But apart from this, I'm doing a part-time internship with a startup called Olka Academy. So where I'm having the experience of recruitment and end-to-end all HR competencies, I'm being able to learn from them. So I wanted to ask that when I go for the interviews, like in the placement interviews, so should I mention them like I'm a fresher, so I am trying to have experience by this startup. So how can I like present myself that I have gained lot many competencies through this startup also? So how can I present like should I, because I have not done any research, but it's kind of experience only for me. So should I go depth in recruitment only then to make them understand that what I have gained in experience from them?
Do you want to go, Cecilia?
No, it's okay. You can go.
Okay. So Kshama, I think two things. One, every experience is valuable. Whether it's a research experience or whether it is working part-time in a company, in a startup, right? See, the interviewer is interested in knowing what you have learned from your time there, right?
Okay.
And therefore you should mention about both, and you should talk about your learnings from both.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, great. There is another question on industrial HR, and I want to take this question. I started my career in Hindustan Unilever, and after the management training program, I started my career in a factory in Punjab, in a place called Rajpura, and I spent almost 4 years there. Right. I think it's a fascinating area if you are interested in working with blue collar employees and interested in managing groups of blue collar employees, right? It involves an interplay of industrial relations, legal aspects, government relations, working with unions, and working with large groups of employees. So it is very, very complex, and if you ask me, I think it's an essential building block of a good HR career. So it is something that you should seriously explore if you're interested.
Okay, so Nandini has a question. How do we figure out which vertical of HR function to start our career with? My personal view, first couple of years, explore every function. And that will kind of help you understand where does your strength lie? You know, what do you really enjoy doing? Where would you think that, okay, you'll be able to leverage your strengths and your talents? And I think that's when you should ideally decide where can you go? You know, which part of the organization would you want to work with? But if you get an opportunity to play a generalist role, go ahead and do that and understand business better through that.
Yes,
Yeah.
so I'd just like to add on to that. Yes, I think it's a great idea to start as a generalist. It's also fine to start as a specialist, get expertise, and then move into a broader, into a broader role. That works as well. What's a good thumb rule to follow is that in five roles that you do in your career, you should have a good mix of COE, that is the specialist roles, and BUHR, because specialist roles gives you the depth and BUHR gives you the kind of agility to be able to really fix or really be able to take theories into action. So they are two sides of the same coin. So just when you have the first five probably roles that you're doing in your career, just ensure that you have a good blend of specialist and BUHR roles, just to make you a stronger HR professional.
Okay, so there's a question. Okay, I'm sorry, there's flood of questions out here actually. All right, so the one which is visible, okay, my summer internship is research related. My project is basically to make a roadmap for a policy for inclusion of LGBTQ employees. Should I do more courses on diversity and inclusion? Yes, you could do that to expand your understanding of this particular project. And if you think that this is one area which you really want to talk about during your final placements and the current project is not giving you that much of depth, please go ahead and do some more courses if you feel like, or you could read more about this and gain different perspectives in terms of what's happening around me now.
Yeah, I'll just give you a practical experience.
Yes. Sure.
So being in India, it's always difficult for people to really come out and talk about being LGBTQ. But what you could, and I'll give you the example of J&J. So in J&J we have different employee resource groups. So while we have the DNI the DNI umbrella, we have different employee groups below that. So we have groups for Generation Now, we have groups for women in leaders. We have groups for mental health. So these are all employee research groups. Out of these employee research groups, employee resource groups. So out of these ERGs, we also have an ERG which is called Open and Out. Now, understanding the situation in India, that you may not have people coming out openly and talking that they are gay or lesbian, but how can your organization really make a safe space? So with J&J, I've seen that in other countries people are quite open about being LGBTQ, but in India we don't have that kind of situation. So in India, our focus for the ERG is to ensure that people feel that okay, it's safe, it's fine the way you are. So there are a lot of activities, a lot of engagement about bringing your true self to work. So no matter who you are, no matter how you are, it is safe to be at work. And I think that's a space that you could also probably work with, is how non-judgmental is the organization, or how far away from being judgmental is an organization, because that will really help you to design this policy. Because if you just design a policy without understanding where the organization is, it probably may not take off, and it will just be something for the book. So that's my view.
Thank you. So,
Minu,
yeah.
Minu, is there time for one more question? I just want to answer. Yeah,
yes, so
a lot of people have
asked.
Yeah,
sorry. Yes,
a lot of people have asked this question on how is the role of HR going to change because of the pandemic. And guys, this is my view. I don't think the fundamental roles of HR are going to change. HR needs to be involved in attracting people, in hiring people, in engaging them, in rewarding them, in managing them. right? I don't think those fundamentals are going to change. What's going to change, and what has already changed if you compare it to what was happening 10 years back, is the way in which it's delivered. And I'll give you 2-3 examples. 10 years back, a lot of companies used to have annual or biannual employee satisfaction surveys. In fact, that was my summer project many years back. So you run a big 70, 60 question employee satisfaction survey, you analyze the results, and then it will take a month, then you present it. Now, we are moving to a real-time, a lot of companies are moving to a real-time, specific, focused engagement pulse surveys, which means there is a AI ML engine in the heart of the instrument, and depending on the demographic profile of the population and depending on the profile of the employee, questions are sent through a variety of mediums like chat, etc. And these questions are compiled and you get a scorecard for every business leader. And these questions change depending on the responses that you get. So it's a machine learning driven algorithm which will give a real-time sense of the engagement levels or the NPS scores in every organization. You have tools like Beacon, Amber, the Lena AI, right, which have kind of replaced classic paper and pen or web-based employee surveys. Right? So the way in which HR is going to change, HR is going to get delivered is going to change. Hiring. There's a company called Talosity, which uses artificial intelligence to assess people on video interviews. And the theme is fascinating. Unilever uses AI to for assessing candidates during video interviews. So the mechanism of how HR is getting delivered is changing, which is why I think it's very, very important to be very, very tech savvy and understand how tech can help HR deliver better. Over to you, Meenu.
So that and if we could take one last question and that's the common theme that I'm seeing in a lot of questions that are coming up is about the whole certifications. What kind of certifications should one take up to actually be in a to actually have an edge in the market. So would you like to throw in some light on that as well?
I would recommend MBTI. MBTI certification is very useful. It helps you understand people better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ganesh, are you there?
I think things have got hung at his end because
yes, looks like yes.
Yeah. So I would just recommend first understanding where exactly does your interest lie. Is it that you want to use psychometrics, and there are lots of different psychometric tools which can help you, but what is it that you're really interested in? I think I saw some questions also about what courses should we take. So, I'll just give you an example is that, see, as an HR professional, you really need to be on top of numbers. You need to be able to feel the pulse of people. Now, this is both qualitative and quantitative, How do you have a good mix of both? And a good way to do that is to also pay attention to compensation-based classes or working capital management, because these are courses in your final year that will really help you be a well-rounded HR professional. Just by understanding a performance management system will not be complete if you don't understand what is the kind of reward system you have in your organization. Your reward system is linked to the money that your organization makes, and not just revenue, but the profitability that your organization makes. How well do you understand these terms? How well are you just going to listen from your finance colleagues, or are you going to have a pulse on that as well? So I would say that in your final year, you must take some classes on finance, like maybe working capital, do 1 or 2 compensation, courses, definitely if you can do a law course, if possible, also look at a psychometric course if that's offered by your college. DNI courses are also pretty good, but then at the end of the day, do ask yourself what is it that you are trying to achieve, whether these courses are practical enough. Otherwise, you'll just load yourself with a lot of theory and you may not know how to implement it. So definitely talk to seniors, talk to people who've done these courses, ensure that it's practical to use the theory that you learn in these courses, whether it is a psychometrics course, whether it is a compensation course, whether it is a rewards course, whether it is an OD course. Just ensure that there is a practical bent to the program or to the course, whatever course you are doing.
Sure. So, last couple of minutes, one of my personal experiences has been, when I do a course with some experience, with some understanding, a practical understanding of the organization, I tend to appreciate the courses better because, there's already, some cases that are built in my mind. There are situations that I've been through, and therefore these certifications actually make sense. So think of it from that perspective as well, that maybe right now it's not about getting more certifications. Maybe like Cecilia said, you need to figure out what do you really want to do, what are you really passionate about, and that will come in once you actually start working. Right now, just use this time to see that, okay, if on paper, on its face, talent acquisition is something that you really like, read more about it, talk to your seniors, talk to your professors to see if there are any papers that you could refer to. You look at how that gets integrated with the business, see what the textbooks are saying, talk to your seniors, etc., and just build that base. Whatever is expected out of you right now, do that really well. And don't, like Cecilia said, don't load yourself with too many certifications and that pressure that I need to do much more than what's expected out of me. So yeah, just stay with that perspective. All right, so we are past 5 now, and I want to thank all of you for being here, and thank you for those lovely questions. I enjoyed talking to all of you and answering some of those questions. And thank you, Cecilia and Ganesh, for being here. Really appreciate your time and the passion with which you spoke about your experiences with the students. So guys, any questions that you may have that we've not been able to take in this particular webinar, please feel to write back to us. You all have our email ID. Write back to us and we will try and come back to you on those questions as soon as we can.
Thank you for the opportunity, and this was very, very interesting.
Thank you, Meenu. Thank you, Ganesh, and thank you all students. Thank you, students, for really spending your time to really hear us out and listen to our experiences. Thank you so much, Meenu, for really considering. And Ganesh, I really enjoyed being on the panel.
Likewise, Cecilia.
Same here. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.